But we're going to begin tonight with the really big question that is facing the country right now. Did the top kill work? The answer? Dunno. Sort of looks like it's working, maybe? That seems to be as far as anybody's willing to go at this point. Here's what it looks like at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico right now. BP was forced to suspend the top kill procedure at one point today. They've now resumed pumping cement into that well. They say it will likely be another 24 hours or so before they know for sure if it worked. If the top kill has worked, if it does work, if there's no longer any oil leaking from that pipe, this may be the right time to ask the next big question facing the country. What damage has been done? It turns out that the damage that's been done is way worse than the damage we thought had been done. Remember when BP said the blown-out well was leaking 1,000 barrels of oil a day? Turns out those were the days. Then BP said it was actually more like 5,000 barrels a day. And now it turns out those were the days too. Because now a federal team created to come up with the best estimate of how big this disaster is says their most conservative assessment, looking at what's on the surface and what they've been able to see coming out of that pipe, their most conservative assessment is more like 12,000 barrels per day. 12. Not 1,000, not 5,000, but 12,000. 12,000 barrels of crude oil pouring into the Gulf of Mexico every single day. That's their conservative estimate. Between 12,000 and 19,000 barrels a day, they say, is a reasonable range. It could be as high as 25,000 barrels a day. So the damage, the pollution, the threat might be 25 times worse than what we were initially told. Even if you take the most conservative informed estimate of the size of this spill now. That means this is the biggest oil spill in U.S. history. More oil has been spilled into the Gulf than what the Exxon Valdez spilled in Alaska in 1989. And when I say more, I mean twice as much. So let's say that top kill worked. Just for argument's sake, let's say BP manages to cap that well right now, this instant. If that happens, congratulations, we now graduate to the next level of disaster, dealing with more than twice the amount of oil spilled in the Exxon Valdez in the Gulf of Mexico, getting it off the shore and out of the wetlands where it's already come in, keeping the rest of it offshore and getting it out of the Gulf. In terms of getting all that oil out of the Gulf, things also appear to be way worse than we thought. You might remember last week when scientists on board the research vessel, the Pelican, said, essentially, don't be consoled by the lack of oil on the surface of the water, because we think we found huge amounts of oil suspended underwater in those big vertical undersea plumes. Remember that last week? They described these big blobs, essentially, these plumes floating well under the surface of the water. The largest one that they described last week was 10 miles long, 3 miles wide, and 300 feet thick. Today, scientists say they have found one like this, 22 miles long, more than 6 miles wide, and about 3,000 feet thick. This is the largest plume of oil undersea that they know of right now. So again, even if the top kill works, stopping the leak doesn't make the leak suck this stuff back down or anything. What do we do about this? How do we get rid of this? This is in the Gulf of Mexico right now, and who knows how many other plumes there are like it. Not to mention this. This is what's happening on the shore already. Miles and miles of marshland coated in oil. Just like with the leak itself, we know it is BP's responsibility to contain the oil, to keep it off the shore, to clean it up. But just because this part of the disaster doesn't have to happen 5,000 feet below the sea, doesn't mean anyone knows how to do this part of it safely either. Workers have been hired to do cleanup of the beaches and the coastal waters that have been hit by oil already. And at this point, 7 of those workers have been hospitalized because of the toxicity of the material that they are working with. Even if that well is capped right now, what harm is being done to the people who are working in the cleanup? How much harm has already been done to the Gulf from the oil that's sitting out there now? And how do you get that oil out of there? How do you keep these oil-coated, suffocated wetlands that are essentially the life jacket that keeps Louisiana from drowning? How do you keep them, now that they've been hit by oil, how do you keep them from dying and eroding into the sea? That gushing well needs to be plugged, but once the oil stops coming out, this disaster is not over. It is only just beginning. That is the reality for the people of Louisiana trying to imagine living through this disaster, and for all of us who believe that defending Louisiana is defending America. It is a reality that was put in stark, raw, emotional relief today by Congressman Charlie Melason, who represents that area.
The recovery phase is just as critical as the response phase. Our culture is threatened, our coastal economy is threatened, and everything that I know and love is at risk. Even though this marsh lies along coastal Louisiana, these are America's wetlands. Hey, Charlie. Excuse me. I just wish to submit for the record. Thank you.
We thank the gentleman, and every member of our committee and every American is praying for the people of Louisiana and the people of the Gulf. It's just an unimaginable tragedy.
Joining us now is Congressman Charlie Melason, whose district essentially is the map of this disaster's most directly affected areas in southeastern Louisiana. He has just traveled from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rachel.
Sir, you were obviously emotional during that congressional hearing this afternoon. Can you tell us what sort of impact this disaster is having on the ground in your district?
Well, after Katrina and Rita and, of course, Gustav and Ike, this entire coastal region that has been beset by these catastrophic events, the last thing they needed was something of this magnitude, and especially something that could be environmentally detrimental, that could go for decades, and not knowing. The people that I know down along the coast that make their living there, I've hunted and fished in all these marshes and coastal areas all my life. My son, I hope to have my grandson be able to do it. It is heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. Today when I got to the meeting to make a statement, I started hearing what I heard after Katrina, and that was the finger-pointing episodes of, I'm going to blame you, I'm going to blame you, and the anger built. The frustration that was already there was at a peak level. My staff will tell you I've not been the friendliest in recent weeks because I guess it's just all built up in me. But I see us going down that same political path, the path that America's tired of, the path that the people in Louisiana are tired of. We just need to buckle down, go do what we need to do, and we'll worry about apologizing for it or taking blame for it later. Pull ourselves up, let's go do it. That's what these fishermen want to do. That's what these people in the coastal areas want to do. Give them the ability to save that which they love, where they make their living, and is so important to this entire state and this nation.
Congressman, the focus right now is obviously still on the response effort, trying to plug the leak that is still, as far as we know, may still be leaking with the conflicting reports we've heard about the top kill and its success. But even if the success, even if the top kill does work, an enormous recovery effort lies ahead. Not only protecting the areas that are on the marshlands and on the coast from the oil that's still out there in the Gulf, but getting that oil out of the Gulf and cleaning up the areas that have already been hit. What do you think is the most imminent challenge? What are you most focused on in terms of making sure that cleanup and protection effort works?
Well, right now, the most important thing, obviously, is plugging this hole, stopping that, and then we can work with whatever that quantifiable amount may or may not be, and start protecting the marshes and doing those things. The people of South Louisiana are resilient. They're not giving up. They're in fighting mode. They want to do what it takes to preserve and save that which is important to them, and I want to be there with them. We're not getting anywhere by just playing the politics of who can do and who can't do. There's laws that, and we'll find out tomorrow where the president may or may not be handicapped. This is not Katrina. This is not a natural disaster. We need to hold BP's feet to the fire, hold them accountable. We also need to look at the government and the people within the government that allowed for waivers of the law. I couldn't get rules waived to help the people of New Orleans in this region after Katrina, and that agency waived the law. And that's it's unthinkable. I can't imagine. But we need to, while we main focus right now is plug the hole, simultaneously continue to try and figure out what it is that will protect America's wetlands, these coastal marshes that are so important to this country. What a lot of people didn't know, and I didn't know, the parishes along this coastline in Louisiana, if they were rated as an economy, would be 29th in the world. 29th in the world. That's how important we are to this country. It's about something that's precious to me, something that's precious to the people in South Louisiana, and for that matter, should be for everybody in Louisiana.
Congressman Charlie Melancon of Louisiana, thank you for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Everybody in the country right now has a little bit of their heart in your district.
Thank you.
Thank you.